All right, I want to open with a little more Warriors talk. I have Ramona and Kendra on right after this, and we recorded Wednesday afternoon before the Suns game about Warriors trade options, Klay Thompson's recovery and uneven play and all of that. And we joked about how, well, the Warriors will probably lose by 40 and we won't have enough urgency about their situation. They didn't lose by 40, but it was another alarming loss in Phoenix, and Steve Kerr made some alarming comments after the game about how the team lacks grit. We lack grit. It's like a pickup game. It's like a Drew League game, I think he said. And Steve is not one to throw those bombs willy-nilly. He's clearly upset with the team. It's been a very puzzling start to the season as we get into on the podcast, all the issues within the team. And the lack of grit, lack of toughness that Steve is citing, it does make you wonder, and we talk about it later, if there's some hangover effect from the punch, and if something happened inside the team, and it's hard to know from the outside. I don't know how to look for punch evidence on the court. Obviously, Jordan-Poole, the victim of said punch, has not played as well as he had last season, and that's a big issue. But last night's loss was a microcosm of everything we talk about in the podcast. Steph Curry has a miracle game, and the Warriors lose. They lose because their defense stinks. They're 26th in defense. They cannot stop fouling people. Their point of attack defenses, we talk about mostly Poole and Klay, but Wiggins has even slipped a little bit in the last week, has been really bad, and that leads to all these fouls. But it's not just that. I mean, they've made bad errors of communication, stuff that's uncharacteristic for them. Jock Landale is a very large and noticeable human being, and 2 or 3 times he just ran down the floor. Like, oh, anyone want to pick up the giant guy running down the floor? No. Oh, he just dunked again. That's just not Warriors basketball. Lost free throws, lost the offensive rebound battle. They're 24th in offensive rebounding, dead last in foul rate. It's the same stuff all season. And offensively, this team is built that they need 2 of Wiggins, Poole, and Klay to play well every game to win. Just 2. They don't need all 3 because you're not going to have all 3 guys shoot well every game. And Wiggins is always going to defend and rebound well and all that stuff. They need 2 of those guys to score efficiently. Last night, they had 35 points combined, the 3 of them, on 11 of 33 shooting. Poole has been massively inconsistent. Didn't make a shot last night. Hasn't been good enough. Klay hasn't been good enough. We all know that. Klay's taken a beating in the media. I think the lack of patience is a little bit unfair to him given the injuries, but he was better than this in the playoffs last year. Ramona and I talk a little bit about what we've heard about his offseason and why he may be starting slowly this time around. But if those 2, they have 5 guys now making a lot of money. One guy is playing as well as humans have played basketball ever. Another guy, Draymond, is playing at, like, I would say 85 to 90% of Draymond levels. He can't quite put out the fires that happen at the top of the defense the way he used to, but he's still pretty damn good, although last night he was weirdly listless. Wiggins is kind of a rock, a little bit quiet lately, needs to be a little louder, but whatever. He's Andrew Wiggins. Poole and Klay just haven't been good enough. And if they're not going to get good games from 2 out of 3 of those guys, you're going to lose some Steph miracle games. And by the way, as we transition into a discussion about Warriors trade options and how there may not even be all that many, the Warriors are getting roasted with all 3 of Steph, Poole, and Klay on the floor. And after the pool party honeymoon period with that lineup last year, the further they got in the playoffs, the less playable it was because of the defensive challenges. And it's getting lit up this year. And it just makes you wonder, like, they just paid Poole a lot of money. Klay's going to want an extension. Can you invest that much money in 3 guards who struggle to play together defensively against the best teams at times? At least I think the jury's still out on that. The sample size is still small, and offensively, holy smokes, is it dynamic. But I think as we transition into a question about Warriors trade options, I think you just have to look at all of the stuff. And I do think, as we talk about in the pod, if they're just sitting at 500 in 10, 20 games, they have to approach this with urgency. They owe it to Steph Curry. They owe it to their core. They owe it to themselves after winning the title last year, frankly, to look at every option. And I still say, as I say on the pod later, it's very unlikely they trade Draymond, and probably Klay, unless the season really just goes off the. I mean, if they're just bad, just like bad. Memphis is super happy because they owe their pick to them in 2024, not this season, but still. If they're just bad, everything gets on the table. But if they're decent with the hope of, let's make another run, I think it's hard to trade one of those two guys. I don't even know how much trade value those two guys have. And that's why we start focusing the podcast on Wiseman and his $10 million salary, which doesn't even get you that much back without another salary attached to it. And the big salaries are really hard to trade. Jordan-Poole is poison-pilled. He's really hard to trade. Klay and Draymond, we just mentioned, are core parts of the team. You could stack all the young guys together, Kuminga, Moody, Wiseman. That gets you to like the 20 million. You can get a Miles Turner sized player for that. You're really trading all the young core for like that. Now, Durant, as we discussed, is a different story. Durant takes everything. And if they continue to struggle like this and the Nets ever reach the Rubicon of it's over, I think the Warriors have to at least think about it again. How could you not? How could you not? Now, do the Nets value any of those players? Do they value the picks that the Warriors can trade? Again, they owe a pick to Memphis, so they're a little bit encumbered. I don't know. Then you start looking at Wiseman trades, and even the Wiseman Jakob Poeltl trade that I float in the podcast, I think it's a good trade. I think it makes sense for both teams. I don't know if the Warriors would even look at that and say, boy, that's just too short-term a move for us. Can we re-sign Poeltl? He's an expiring contract. We have tax issues. Can we re-sign him? And then again, Wiseman's going to make $12 million next year. In the last year of his rookie contract, by the way, he's already up for an extension after the season. Has barely played basketball. That impacts his trade value. Teams don't really know how to look at him. Like, is he going to get a big payday because he's the number 2 pick? Is he not? What is he? Who knows? But the Warriors may look at that and just say, well, is that really worth it to trade from our young core for a guy who, are we going to play Draymond at the 5 in crunch time? And so how many center minutes do we really need? I don't know, but I know that the urgency level that Kendra, Ramona, and I talk about in the next half an hour, it just ticked up a little bit of a notch last night in Phoenix, because when you can't beat the Suns without Chris Paul, without Cam Johnson, without Instagram and Twitter personality Jay Crowder, and Steph Curry has 50 points, it's somewhat problematic, even though all credit to the Suns. They've been resilient as all hell. They're playing great. It's just, you're going to hear some urgency in the next half hour. I would say after last night, dial it up one notch on the urgency meter. Anyway, Ramona and Kendra have all the inside info about Klay's recovery, about the Warriors. Please enjoy that conversation, and then enjoy Matt Barnes on the rollicking Sacramento Kings. Thank you for listening. Welcome to the Lowe Post Podcast on a Wednesday afternoon, where we had a Ramona Shelburne massive story drop on the one and only Klay Thompson. And so it's time to talk the very strange and very still looking for a road win as we record this podcast on 2:20 Pacific time on Wednesday afternoon. The defending champion Golden State Warriors. We have a full house. Ramona, how are you?
Good. How are you, Zach?
I'm good. Kendra Andrews, our Warriors beat reporter. How are you?
I am good.
Ramona, congratulations on a wonderful cover story on Mr. Klay Thompson. You went sailing with him. You saw his sailing shoes. I was not aware until reading the story that there is apparently a dock outside the Chase Center where he can dock his boat before and after games if he wants to boat back from practices and games. That's when you have a dock that he's earned a dock. You hit all the threes in Game 6 in Oklahoma City, you get a dock. So Klay got a dock.
Yeah, there's a restaurant there. It's called The Ramp, and it's literally like, if you walked quickly, it would be 6 or 7 minutes, but it's really like 10 minutes. And even Klay doesn't even like to walk. He's always like in a move fast, and so he usually takes a bike. And he's now trying to get an e-bike so that he can go even faster from where the dock to the the Chase Center is. But it's like, I mean, it's kind of like George Clooney and Up in the Air. It's like, let's go, keep it moving, keep going. And I think that that became sort of a theme of the piece. When you're around Klay, he really doesn't like to sit still. He really likes to keep moving. And who can blame him? Because for the last 2.5, 3 years, he's been stuck sitting there at home, binging Netflix or YouTube videos, rehabbing from these awful injuries that he's had. And so when you're forced to sit still for as long as he has, you never want to sit still again.
Let's talk about both the piece and the issues that it raised, not only with Klay's his rehab and his early season play, which has bizarrely been worse than his late season play from last season, and also the Last Dance issues that were brought up. And I thought Ramona kind of candidly talked about by Steve Kerr, and Stephen Curry says in your story something to the effect of the ending of things is never graceful. And Steve Kerr says, I don't know how much longer we have, but we're in the final stages. And I don't know, Kendra, did that, you being around this team, did those quotes kind of smack you in the face like they smacked me in the face?
A little bit. And I think there's two different ways that you can look at this, because when they were in Ramona's story, they were talking about, and she was writing about in this instance, Klay, Stephen Curry, Draymond Green, and of course, Andre Iguodala, who has said, this is going to be his last year. So from that standpoint, yeah, okay, Andre being that first piece to move on makes sense, but it does start to bring up other questions. Zach, you and I have talked on this podcast about Draymond Green. What does his future with the Warriors look like? And hearing those comments and reading those comments from Steve Kerr and Steph, it does just make you think, okay, after Andre, what's the next shoe to drop? Who is it going to be? And could it happen as soon as this upcoming summer?
Or as soon as this upcoming trade deadline, I still think is incredibly unlikely, as I've said all along. But them starting 6-8 is, again, we're recording this before they play the Suns tonight. They could be 7-8 by the time this goes up. Scheduling conflicts are what they are. We just have to do it now. Them starting 6-8, I think, is a plot twist that even they didn't see coming. Even the skeptics within the team, maybe not skeptics, but even with the people within the team who thought it's going to take the young guys time to replace Otto Porter, Nemanja Bjelica, GP2. I don't think even they expected to be 6-8. And honestly, it's a bizarre 6-8. It's hard to be 6-8. And as again, we're going to this game tonight, have an overall point differential of -2. When your starting lineup might be the best lineup in the entire sport.
Yep.
Their starting lineup is +79 for the season. Yeah. All of their other lineups are -81 combined. And their starting lineup, the eye test matches the numbers. That thing is a goddamn symphony. Those guys can play with their eyes closed now. The level of passing and ball movement and cutting is just extraordinary. And once Klay starts finishing more of those possessions by making shots, those numbers are going to get even better offensively. That lineup, I never thought I would say beautiful basketball and Andrew Wiggins in the same sentence, that he's consistently a part of just beautiful basketball. And he is. It's hard to have a lineup that good and be 6-8 with a -2 point differential, because in theory, if that lineup is that good, you just take a couple of guys from that lineup, you put them with the bench groups, things work out, your team's good. And yet, of course, they've been in a little bit of disarray in that regard. They just sent James Wiseman to the G League. JaMychal Green's back in the rotation. Kuminga's back in the rotation. DiVincenzo needs to stay healthy. It's a weird 6-8. And I guess I'll start with you, Ramona. When you see the starting five number and the overall team numbers, like, how are they reading that internally? Do they look at that and say, we're cool, look at our starting five? Like, that's the vibe I usually get from them, is like, this is a closer approximation to what our team really is. But what do you hear?
So the general vibe that you have around the Warriors is that this year is going to be very different than last year. And it started off, with the Draymond Green, Poole incident, the TMZ leak. When I was up there, I actually had to go up there a couple of different times because they were, I would have things set up and then they would cancel the practice the next day or the shoot around. And there was this sense of last year they were there all the time. There was this developmental work that they were doing with the young guys. They were practicing all the time. They were fresh. They had all these. They really didn't have any deep playoff runs that they had to recover from the previous 2 seasons. This year, there's a pacing that they've had to institute really from the jump. Like there's this idea of we got to keep our guys healthy and fresh for when it matters. And the regular season is not as important as it was. I remember one of the games I had gone up there and they lost to the Nuggets. It was early on and they lost to the Nuggets and Klay was at his locker and he goes, I guess we're not going 24-0 again. Right. Like that was, do you remember when they defended their title, the first title they won?
That's the 73-win season. And their first loss was in Milwaukee when they had the T-shirts made before the game about how they're going to be 24-1.
Yeah. And so there's sort of from the beginning of the season been an acceptance, Zach, that we can't do things like we did last year. We can't have full throttle from out of the gates because we got to pace our guys. We had a long run last year. We have players who are in their early to mid 30s, sometimes late 30s if you count Iguodala, in the part of that core. And we just have to, take our time finding out whatever the new normal is. Then there's the added drama of Wiggins and Poole getting their contract extensions done before the year, but Draymond not getting a contract extension, to where it sort of brought into stark relief this idea of the handoff is happening. There's a baton pass that's happening between the old group and the new group. And is this baton pass going to be seamless? Is it going to be clunky? Do they need to practice it? Can it happen all at once? We see the 2 eras. There's a recognition that a lot of things that are happening all at once. And a patience I think they have with it because they did this already. They defended the title already. They went and they did this 5 straight years and went to the final. So it's harder every single year because each year is different. And so I don't sense a level of panic amongst the Warriors. There's still a relaxed quality about, we'll find it, we'll get it. We just have to work through these different groups. But there is that finality that, neither Steve Kerr or Steph Curry really wanted to go there when I raised the issue of, hey, like how much longer are you guys going to be able to do this? They didn't really want to go there, but they did because they're also realistic about the idea of, I think Steve said it best. If you read the whole quote, because context matters. He said, we've been at this a decade. We've had this group together for a whole decade, and that's a long time in professional sports.
Doesn't happen.
It doesn't really happen in sports to have a group like this together for an entire decade to rise. They fell off. They rise back up again. They're trying to squeeze out another couple of championships. I think the one thing everyone in Golden State will tell you is Steph Curry is going to be the last one standing. Okay. No matter, I don't know what order.
It should be by law. They should pass a law.
By law.
Because as I've said this many times, there is nothing without Steph Curry. There is no Chase Center. There are no championships. There are no banners. The Warriors are still a joke and a punchline with diehard fans in the loudest arena in Oakland if Steph Curry is not drafted or if someone else drafts Steph Curry.
Yeah, but there is that recognition, and especially if you get people, and because we've all been around the Warriors for so long, right? If you get people in their honest moments, I think they all know that this is the tail end of this, like however long this lasts, right? It's of this group, and will there be a second act with the next group with Poole and Wiggins and Kuminga and Wiseman? That remains to be seen. They're still in the process of this handoff, but for however much longer this lasts, whether it's this year, next year, the year after that, they all have this sense of like, we got to enjoy this while we have it, because these kind of teams and these kind of dynasties, they're not built very often, and they certainly don't get rebuilt the way that Golden State has the last year or so.
We got to enjoy this while we have it. Harder to enjoy when one player punches another player, knocks him down, and it gets leaked to the media. Ramona, in your story, you rather pointedly say the underlying issues of that incident are still there. Or I don't remember the exact words, but persist or something like that. Kendra, do you sense that? Do they? It's a subject they just don't appear to be talking about, and they won't talk about it. And it's hard to know because Draymond looks like Draymond.
Yep.
Poole's been struggling relative to expectations, and then he had 36 the other night as a starter. He looks like Jordan-Poole. It's hard to see and feel. Is it there?
I think it's there in intangible ways, kind of like you're saying. Draymond's out there doing Draymond's thing. Jordan's out there trying to continue to crack out. They have a good two-man game, right? So everyone's always looking on the court to see, well, are they high-fiving? How are they interacting on the court? Are they passing to each other? And yes, because they want to win. But the Warriors are still in a process of building chemistry, and it's happening on a lot of different levels. It's happening on the basketball side of things where they're figuring it out. But, even Steve Kerr said in a press conference the other day, we're still building chemistry both on and off the court. That comes with integrating new players. And that also comes with moving past what he said and what Ramona quoted in her story. Steve called it the biggest crisis that he's had since he joined the Warriors 9 years ago. That doesn't go away overnight. That doesn't go away over a matter of a couple days. You had Draymond stoke the fire a little bit more when he put out that documentary. That didn't go over very
Didn't
well.
Didn't land well with the Academy. It's not going to be nominated for a lot of nominations.
So you can, as much as you can put issues aside to do your job and to do it to the best of your ability, there are always going to be underlying issues or tense moments and stuff, and the Warriors are trying to get past it, but it's never gonna happen with the snap of your fingers and say, okay, you apologize, you say it's okay, let's keep it moving. It takes more than that.
Ramona, what did you mean when you wrote that line?
The issues are still underlying.
What are the issues? What are you? The contract issues?
Oh yeah, I mean, I think everybody felt that sense that Andrew Wiggins and Jordan-Poole are a part of the future. They invested in them. They gave them the contract extensions. They signed relatively team-friendly contracts, and Draymond Green's contract was not extended. And he's got a player option for next year. Okay, so it's he's under contract and he can pick that up if he wants. Klay makes a lot of money next year, but this team, I think there's a very real recognition amongst everyone there that this team is about to get very expensive, historically expensive, and the Warriors ownership has shown a willingness to pay historically expensive prices for a championship team. But this team right now, as you said, is not looking like a championship team. 6-8 as we talk right now, 2:00 Pacific time on Wednesday. Maybe we'll see what they are after tonight. But this team hasn't been at the same level as they were. And there's this sense of, if they continue to contend, if they get back to where they were last year and they are contending for a title, then that's a good argument to keep this group together and pay all that money. Mm-hmm. But if they're not a championship team,
and that's why I said all along, like, I don't see a Draymond Green trade happening in the aftermath of the punch. Everybody was doing the fake trades, and I said they want to win the title.
Yeah. Right.
And what I kept hearing was, unless things go really sideways and we're suddenly just a bad team or something, like we're gonna stick it out. But it is interesting, like the 2 timeline thing. So ballyhooed. It's ballyhooed.
Yeah.
I remember saying and thinking last year during the finals that they were really vindicated for pursuing this 2 timeline path, for not trading the farm for Brad Beal or, God forbid, Ben Simmons or something like that, because they won. Mm-hmm. And they did win. And I guess they were vindicated in that sense. But the more I thought about it, the more it's like, well, Poole's the only young guy who actually did anything in the entire playoffs, other than a couple of Moses Moody games against Dallas where he was a bit player. It's like the second part of the timeline didn't come along, but the assumption underlying my vindication statements was it'll come along now. And it hasn't really come along yet. And the highest draft pick of all of them is in the G League right now. Mm-hmm. It's a weird
The other thing I was going to point out, and I thought Steph really made this point well, and he used a Big Brother reference to make it. Okay, which is, I love that Steph watches Big Brother and can quote from it. But
what happens on Big Brother? They just live together? Is there a plot?
No, they live together.
How do you win?
You stay alive the longest, I guess. Like you don't.
Wait, you stay alive? What are people trying to murder you?
I think they vote you out, right? Didn't they vote you out of the house?
For what? For being like messy?
Bad roommates.
I don't. You know what?
I don't want.
I can't believe. I hope Disney doesn't own Big Brother because I can't believe anybody watches this show.
It's been on forever though, and
we gotta get you on.
And I'm like, of all the shows, the reality TV shows that I would expect Steph Curry to watch, Big Brother is not the one. Okay, but here it was. The best part about our team is it's kind of a judgment-free zone, Steph said. Obviously, everyone's accountable to the team to bring the commitment that we are trying to do as a group. But if this was like the show Big Brother, it'd be a lot of different subplots. Okay. In other words, there's a lot of different subplots going on in Warriors land right now. And I think Steph and I got onto this topic, and it's always fun to talk to Steph in this way, because I just had my second kid. He's got 3 kids. Like, we understand what it's like to be a parent, where you have to just let go sometimes and let your kids be your kids and let them go through what they need to go through, and you can't always intervene and change them, because that's your job, right? And he's really good at that with this team, and I think that's partially why the Warriors have always worked as a team, is that Steph is the guy that is totally comfortable being the face of the franchise and all that comes with it. Draymond is the edge, and he sometimes steps over it, but everybody kind of understands they need that too. Klay's Klay, as Steve Curley says, he's not low maintenance, he's zero maintenance. Andre is the sort of wise old sage who can show up in April Robert Horry style and just be Andre. And even if he doesn't play, he's still so valuable, they'll have him on the team for as long as he'll play. They work because they don't try to change each other. And they work because they let each other be each other. But there's a lot of different subplots, right? There's a lot of different tension there. Yeah. And now we have this whole new generation of the Jordan-Poole subplot and the Andrew Wiggins subplot.
Well,
Wiseman.
And I've been talking to, coaches and players, and I'm writing a story kind of on management, because Ramona, a couple minutes ago, you were talking about how last season, right, it was practice. This season, it's our guys are older. We have to pull back. But there's a whole other group. There's a whole other subplot where, if anything, they need more. And Steve Kerr admitted to me, I have to readjust the way I'm approaching this, because I can't approach this roster of 15, 16 guys the same way. I have to approach 4 or 5 guys one way, 5 or 6 guys a whole different way. And then James Wiseman, we have to approach with a whole different way. And so with all these subplots, even the coaching staff is trying to figure out, how do we manage all of these different timelines so that it can maybe, hopefully, converge into one seamless baton handing off process. And they're admitting, listen, we're not doing a good job of that right now. We have to figure it out, because it isn't, like we said, it's not.
You know why you have to figure it out? You know why you have to figure it out
right now?
Because you know why? Because Steph Curry is playing as well or better than he has ever played. He is a freaking supernova. The minute he steps on the floor, the entire game changes in every possible way, and they owe it to him. And they owe it to themselves, having paid all this money for all these players, to put together a championship level team. Now, I went into this season thinking they are a championship level team. Yeah. They were in my inner circle of contenders. They haven't played like it so far. Now, if they just stand pat, I am optimistic that they will get there, because not win the championship, but they'll be about what we thought they were going to be, because starting 5 is that good, because Klay is going to stop missing every single jump shot short at some point. He's Klay Thompson. He's Klay freaking Thompson.
Yeah.
I believe in DiVincenzo as a bench player for them. I like JaMychal Green. I think Moody will be ready by the end of the year or sooner to be a regular rotation guy. Iguodala, we'll see. And then after that, it's a little bit of a question mark. Like Kuminga, I fell head over heels for Kuminga last season, and he just hasn't followed it up. I like the way he's looked recently, and now that he's back in the rotation, but he gets a little hazy off the ball on defense in a way that, in the exact way that drives coaches crazy about young players. I mean, those are the mistakes he's going to make. And so it just sort of, I think they'll get back there, but there are more questions and more ifs and more, how can they figure out these other lineups that don't have Steph on the floor? How can they survive in those minutes? And there are a little bit more ifs than I thought. So Kendra, I'll ask you the same kind of question I asked Ramona. Like, how are they feeling about the state of the team? How is management feeling about the state of the team? Because, they can't trade Wiggins. He's not trade eligible because of his extension. They can trade a future first round pick, although they would have to go to Memphis and probably beg them to lift the protections and give Memphis more stuff for their pleasure of doing that. It is actually hard unless they're going to trade Draymond, which again, I've already said I don't think will happen.
I don't either.
For them to get like a lot of money,
right,
without trading like 2 or 3 people, because Wiseman is the one, and
right.
He makes $9 million.
Mm-hmm.
It's not like you can go get Miles Turner for just James Wiseman. I'm not even saying they would do that.
Right.
But are they even thinking about this stuff yet, or are they just in like, we're pretty confident in what we got?
I think there is a level of confidence that they're trying to maintain, and they're trying to have patience. And I think having patience isn't something that the Warriors have had to practice in the past 6 or 7 years. And so, there is some confidence there, I think, especially with Moses Moody. I think there's some confidence in Jonathan Kuminga and what they can do and what they can develop. And I think clearly right now, the biggest question is James Wiseman and this G League stint and what's going to come from that, because there's 2 different routes that this could kind of lead to for the Warriors. One is you go down to the G League and you're looking for him to improve so that you can bring him back to Golden State and have him be that in that role that they kind of expected him to be. The other route is that you go down to the G League and you improve enough where your trade stock is back to, make you a good asset that teams are then going to say, yeah, actually, maybe it's more of a rebuilding team, but we see now the upside in James Wiseman. We'll take him and here's some other pieces for you. So I think it's a little bit of a wait and see how these 10 days go in the G League to see before you start really penning things in and say, this is the direction that we're moving in. Because the thing with the Warriors is that they want to see James Wiseman succeed. They don't want him to be a bust. The Warriors have a lot of pride, and just, I think, for a little bit of
pride's a good word. Pride's a dangerous word sometimes, but it's a good word.
But I do think that there is they don't want their ego to get hit by people saying, oh, you should have drafted LaMelo. Oh, you shouldn't have.
The L word. The L word came out.
The P word, the L word, it's all coming out now. But I think that's a lot on James Wiseman's shoulders that management is thinking, and it's kind of all coming to a head right now.
All right, well, let's zoom back out. The real problem for the Warriors is A, this bizarre lineup split, but B, it's defense. They're 26th in defense going into tonight. They're fouling the bejesus out of everybody. And if you sort their lineups and look up their foul rate when Klay and Poole are both on the floor, your laptop starts smoking from how bad the numbers are. And that's where, like, Poole's never been a good defender. He's been worse this year. Like, he's just getting roasted off the dribble all the time. And Klay's slippage on defense is a little harder to see. He's just he's not as clean changing directions and shifting around the floor. And there's, like, you watched him try to chase Kevin Huerter around the other night. Yeah. One screen, one cut, and Kevin Huerter had like 5 feet of space to shoot. And Klay just couldn't. I don't know if that'll come. I don't really get what's going on there, but it's defense, and Wiseman's defense has been terrible.
Yes.
And so we'll see how that stabilizes as they play more veteran guys, as they play more hybrid lineups, as they make sure that one of Draymond, Klay, and Steph is on the floor at the same time. But that's the issue. Yes. And if they're not going to trade Draymond, Wiseman is, for better or worse, the trade asset. And that's why you said, when you said pride, That's what was interesting to me, because there are two ways they can look at Wiseman internally. Number one, for trying to win in the next 2 to 3 years, it's a sunk cost. We screwed up. We have to trade him for whatever we can get that helps us win. And number two, man, he's the number 2 pick. Our owner absolutely adores him. We cannot trade the number 2 pick in the draft for Alec Burks or Kelly Oubre, who's already a failed Warrior, or Terry Rozier, if it were even like possible to do that money-wise, or Doug McDermott, who may not be able to stay on the floor defensively when it really matters. Or these are the names. Like, if you look at the rebuilding teams, other than the Pacers guys who we'll talk about, these are names where if you told the Warriors you have to trade James Wiseman for them, they'd be like, what? No, and if you have to trade James Wiseman and a pick for them, they'd be like, hell no. I mean, but these are the names with a couple of do you want to hear? Okay. So Momo, you want to say something. I can tell you want to say something. Say something. No?
Well, no, it's okay. You can keep going. I like your rant.
It's not a rant. It's not a rant. But like these. Well,
you were talking about Klay Thompson and his defense, and whether that's going to come back. Whether this.
I don't get it. I don't. Did he? I heard rumblings that he kind of changed his routine in the summer and played less pickup, and maybe that's why his legs aren't there.
Yep.
Yeah. So essentially, some of this, Zach, is that he did not do pickup like he normally did. He worked out one-on-one down at he works out at the Stance gym down there in Orange County and stuff. But he got hurt playing pickup when he was coming back from the ACL. Mm-hmm. And I think there was something in his head that said, I don't want to do that again. I don't want to put myself in that position. And so while he trained and he was in shape and all that, it's a different level of ramp up that you have to get to. When you're playing pickup, when you're really playing 5-on-5 pickup games. And he didn't do that in the off season. And that's why they brought him along so slowly in the preseason. They're even bringing him along slowly during the regular season. There's this sense of like, you got time, take your time. You can get back there. We don't need to rush this. You don't want to put yourself in a position where you're going to get hurt. And he sort of accepted it. And yet I also feel him pressing because as Klay even says in the piece several times, like it was really interesting talking to him because his head knows that he's not the same player he was. His head knows that. He feels it. He will admit that. He will say, even if I'm 90%, I'm still a hell of a player. But the competitor in him says, I am never going to accept that. And that's why he gets so upset when Charles Barkley says, oh, you're slipping, because it's not for lack of effort. It really isn't. This is the Warriors putting I don't want to say the clamps on him, but the Warriors saying, hey, just go slow. You got time. Let's be ready when it's time. And Klay's like, I waited 3 freaking years to be ready. I want to play right now. Like he's just popping out of his skin to go play again and be the old Klay. Yeah. And so there's this internal conflict, which we write about a lot in the story and in the TV piece, where you can feel Klay like his head knows, but his heart and his competitive spirit doesn't accept it. And so that's what I think you're seeing on the court right now. That's what you're seeing on his social media posts. That's what you've had like 3 different press conferences where he kind of bears his soul, right? I mean, every night I look up, I mean, it's like, oh my God, here comes.
When we were in Phoenix I'm in Phoenix now, and we were here a couple weeks ago for their first matchup here. I asked Klay, like, did you when you came back last season, you knew that you were going to be brought along slowly. You knew you'd be resting on one end of back-to-backs, but did you think this is where you were going to be heading into this season? And he was honestly like, no, like I didn't think I was going to still have to be patient. And it was interesting. I was talking to Andre Iguodala at shoot around this morning, and we were more talking about the young guys, but I think this applies to Klay too, because we were talking about defense. And Andre said, these guys want to help so bad. They want to do all the right things so bad that now you're doing things that you shouldn't even be doing because you want it so bad. And then you end up messing everything up and you mess other people up because of that. And I think that can also in some regards be applied to Klay too. He wants it so badly that then he ends up making a mistake, which then maybe takes someone out of their spot or their rhythm. And it's a chain of reaction thing. But yeah, I think when it comes to Klay, we live in a world of instant gratification, and he is a guy who wants things right now. And like Ramona said, his head knows that that's not going to happen.
I'll tell you this.
What you want.
It'll be 20 years from now. Klay could still be in the NBA. Every time he shoots, I think it's going in, and it will never change. I've got to go quickly.
Jack, do you like that quote? Do you like that quote from Bruce Fraser? If James Naismith, Bruce Fraser, who's known as Q,
question man.
Okay, he's the silver fox out there warming Steph Curry.
Woo!
Q's out there, and he said, if you were to ask James Naismith when he invented the game of basketball, what shot would be the most pure jump shot you could ever think of, I think his definition would be Klay Thompson's jump shot. And I was like, whoa, you also coach Steph Curry. Right? And he goes, yeah, but if you're just talking about the shot, like if James Naismith came up with a player, he would probably say Steph. But if you're talking about the purity of that jump shot, I think he would say Klay Thompson. And I thought that was an incredible quote and incredible praise, but I can't argue with it. Could you? I mean, it's still
it's a beautiful jump shot. Let's wrap quickly because I have to go. Yep. I do think if they're still mucking around in a month, they are going to have to start looking at making trades because it's too precious. The now is just too precious. What Curry is doing is too incredible. Mm-hmm. And then you go through the names and you run into the issues that I talked about. There's player pool A that is, you just can't stomach trading James Wiseman for those players. Mm-hmm. There's player pool B, and I named some of them, that are too expensive, and you need to start adding other pieces and or trading a core veteran player, which they don't want to do. I would put other guys I didn't mention are like Bojan Bogdanovic in Detroit, which is a name that's going to be mentioned all over the place. Guys like that. And then you have Durant, who's just in his own pool over here. And again, if they can't trade Wiggins and Jordan Poole is poison pilled, it pretty much has to be one of the holdover veterans, plus all the picks, all the kids, all that stuff for Durant. Your eyes are wide, Momo. Do you just think this is a non-starter for them?
I don't think they do anything.
Because I'll say this, the last two Nets games, it was cute. The Edmund Sumner, Royce O'Neal was cute, and the vibes were better. And I said at the time, at some point, the talent is the talent, and the talent came crashing back down to earth.
Yeah. So are you bringing up the Nets like you're floating a KD reunion? Is that, are you?
No, I
fighting it again?
I still don't see any other end game for Brooklyn, whether it's this year or next year or somewhere down the line, than rebooting their team by trading Durant.
Yeah, I agree with that. I don't think that. I also think that things got so toxic in Brooklyn with everything, with not just KD, but with Kyrie and Ben Simmons. Then there's this latest Kevin Durant quote where it smacked of like,
yeah.
Do you remember the early Kyrie quote about the guys on our team who are part of the core group? And it was like it just was very reminiscent of the core group quote from like 3 years ago. I was like, oh, okay.
That quote was essentially like, I'm on the court with all these guys by name. What do you think is going to happen to our team?
Yeah.
All right.
I was like, whoa. So, but I think with Brooklyn, like I don't see any other way it ends with than Kevin getting traded at some point. But he has so many years left on his deal, and I don't think you trade him lightly. And I don't think you trade him unless you really feel like it's a deal you can live with. Right?
So here are a couple sweet spot Warriors names that fit money wise, that probably fit talent wise, that Wiseman fits on the other end. Jakob Poeltl is a name I would keep my eye on for the Warriors and pretty much any other team. $9 million expiring contract. Boom, done. He helps us. He's an A defender at center. Can he shoot? No. Can he shoot free throws? No. But he's a good passer, good shot blocker, can do what Looney does for us, more or less. If I'm them and I call Charlotte, I might try to see if I can get PJ Washington for Wiseman, because Charlotte's been hunting for a center every which way, a lob catching center. PJ Washington's about to enter free agency, so you got to pay him, but he's good. I know he can shoot. That's just a name. I'm not sure I would do that trade because it's so early, but these are the kind of names. Like even Miles Turner. Miles Turner's an $18 million player. It's hard for the Warriors to just cobble all that salary to get Miles Turner. But I think they're going to right the ship still. They're probably, now, having said that, they're probably going to lose by 40 tonight in Phoenix and we'll all look like idiots. But I think they're going to right the ship to some degree, but they are not, I bet they don't sit on their hands if it's a month from now and they're still mucking around 500. That's my guess.
Especially if Steph can continue to play at least close to the level that he started the season at, because you can capitalize off of what Steph's doing right now.
I think my last thought, Zach, on whether they do or don't trade anybody or make a move here is, having been around this team for the better part of a decade, right? This run that they've been on has basically been almost a decade now. The thing that there's a lot of things that they've done very well and have contributed to them being a dynastic team. And one of the more underrated things is the way they're able to compartmentalize drama like this and tension like this. For as much as everybody up there seems happy and easygoing and they're in a good place and they go out on the boat and spear fishing and whatever, like there's been a lot of drama. There really has over the years. And they sort of moved through it, past it.
A central protagonist in much of that drama has been Draymond Green, but he's been worth it. He's been worth it. Look. Yeah,
he's been worth it. Look, Kevin Durant joined a burner account on the eve of media day one year. That was a thing.
Why do you think Draymond is still on the team? Because they all know he's worth it. That's why.
Worth it. Good character on Big Brother. Right?
Kendra Andrews, your work is incredible for us. You got a story coming out on Friday, right?
Yes, all about diving into their defensive woes and stuff like that, and the James Wiseman's defense, the young guys' defense, Draymond Green's, even his, like when he's in the lineup, defensive numbers are slipping and stuff. So
slippage.
I said it's all down to their defense.
Ramona Shelburne, your piece on Klay was fantastic. We had a televised component that was great.
Thank you.
And the piece itself is great. It's on ESPN.com, and you can see it because you'll immediately notice the picture of Klay Thompson in sailing wear with a captain's hat on, lounging.
Yes.
You seem like you got some Sperry's. You got some Sperry's, Zach?
I don't even know. You said that, and I only knew they were shoes because of the context of the sentence. So no, I do not.
I got you some.
And I will not ever be a boat person. But boats are cool. It's fine. I'll be on a boat.
He really does drive it himself. I mean, my favorite line from the whole story is, you could hire a deck crew, Klay, and he's like, what's the point of that? It's like being in the Boy Scouts,
I just want Klay to respect nature. If it's a storm,
Zach, he tracks this weather. I cannot tell you how many times I'll be having conversations with him and he's looking at his phone and I'm like, what are you looking at? And he's like, sorry, I'm tracking the weather. I'm tracking the tide. I guarantee you, anytime
he's got a sea log in the galley. I'm like, is that your diary? He's like, no, it's it's my sea log.
Honestly, what a national treasure Klay Thompson is. Okay, guys, thank you very much. Be well. Thanks for all the great work. I'm very excited for my next guest. Many year NBA veteran, unflinchable when faced with inbounds passes in his face, NBA champion, co-host of the wildly popular podcast / television video experience, All the Smoke with Steven Jackson. Matt Barnes, how are you, sir?
I'm good, Zach. Thanks for having me.
We are going to talk about the Sacramento Kings. You are contributing to their broadcast this year, adding a lot to it. Kings broadcast is getting really good. There's a lot of good voices on that broadcast. But I just did a whole thing on the Warriors. They got shellacked again last night in Phoenix, even though Steph had 50. Before we get to the Kings, what is the Matt Barnes worry level on the Golden State? Well, Matt Barnes is a champion Golden State Warrior, a We Believe Golden State Warrior. What is your worry level on the Warriors?
Not too high from a standpoint that we're still in November. I feel like obviously, this team's success over the last 8 years, 4 championships, we know the window is closing, but we also know that the season gets boring. And I say that with all due respect, and I hope fans don't take that the wrong way. But when you've been kind of through the process and to the top of the mountain several times, the season gets to become a drag at some point. I got a chance to talk to Steph before the Kings Warriors game last week. I was in up north, and obviously congratulated him on an amazing year he's having. And I just kind of asked what's up with the team, and he's just like, we're gonna get it. We're still trying to figure it out. And from the outside looking in, that's what I thought. I think Steve Kerr realizes that his core group, he can't ride them like they've been ridden in the past. This is a team that's obviously getting older. Klay still trying to find his rhythm, coming back off, nearly 2.5 years being gone. You can't tell anything's wrong with Steph, but still he's got miles. So I just think that they're trying to figure out what this young core can give them. Obviously Wiseman's inconsistency, and he's down in the G League right now. Kuminga's, promotion back into the rotation. Moody's kind of on that edge. Jordan-Poole's play has been up and down since getting that big contract. So I just think they're trying to figure out what they have. But I like guys like DiVincenzo and JaMychal Green, who are vets who've, been through the war. So my worry level isn't too high. I feel like this team, once they start getting it, will be fine. I don't see them, Zach, trying to compete for a top 2 or even 3 seed in the West. I think that, they could be anywhere between 3 to 5. Obviously, they probably want home court advantage. But again, once you get to the playoffs, that's where their experience level will kick in, and that's where their expertise will kick in. So I think, to answer your question, my level is not too high on my worries with them. Obviously, there's things during the season you're going to want to continue to address, and it is alarming that they started 0-8 on the road. But again,
Crazy.
If any team can turn it around, out of all the teams that we kind of thought that would be a little bit higher than they are now, I definitely have confidence in the Warriors to be able to do that.
Let's transition right now to a place where there's no worry right now. It is all good vibes, happy-go-lucky. Except, even just saying this, I remember 2 seasons ago, De'Aaron Fox was player of the month or player of the week, and I had him on my podcast, and everything went south immediately because it's the Kings. So I'm worried. The Sacramento Kings, 7-6, could be 9-4 with a little help, or at least not harm from the Zebras. The number 2 offense in the NBA, behind only the Boston Celtics, the number 2 half-court offense in the NBA. So it's not just they're racing up and down, piling up points in transition. 26th on defense, but as we're going to talk about, I think they're better than that, and I think they will start climbing up the rankings toward average a little bit. And just a freaking ball to watch. They are playing with such great energy, such great burst. The just passing, the 4th in assist rate, they're helping each other out. I was high on the Kings before the season. Their over-under was 33.5, and I kept telling people, if you are the type, that's a lock. Hit the over hard. This team's going to be in the play-in race at worst. They look even better than I thought. You're on the broadcast. By the way, a little trivia about Matt Barnes that I forgot about. You were on the Kings when they traded Chris Webber in 2005 and when they traded DeMarcus Cousins in 2017. And I think you were waived because of the DeMarcus Cousins trade, because they got so many players back. So you have seen the end of 2 mini eras, and now we're here. What's gotten you fired up about these guys?
Top 10 in every important offensive statistical category. And I think what you hit on too is number 2 in half-court offense, which is important. This team hasn't necessarily been successful. Obviously, with De'Aaron Fox at the helm, he's one of the fastest guys end to end. So you expect them to be doing well in transition. But I just love what they've built. Obviously, I want to salute Monty McNair, because he made a very, at the time, unpopular trading, Tyrese Haliburton for Domantas Sabonis. And it had a lot of very mixed reviews. But I felt that if he was bold enough to trade, arguably the team, the town, the team, everyone loved Haliburton. If he's bold enough to make that trade, I figured that would bode well in the offseason, because he wouldn't be afraid to take a few risks here and there. And I think what they really were able to do this offseason was get shooting. Kevin Huerter, when I saw that they got Kevin Huerter, I was like, he's perfect for this Mike Brown / Golden State type offense with a lot of movement and someone that can catch and shoot, spot up shoot, and even surprising me, being able to come off the dribble and shoot, and also an underrated playmaker. Malik Monk has finally found his rhythm. Was really surprised the Lakers didn't re-sign this guy, because obviously he was the one guy that shot 40% from the 3-point line last year, and that's something the Lakers lack. but he's starting to find his rhythm. I think if he's continued to lock in, I've been able to talk to him, I think he can be in the Sixth Man of the Year race. Obviously, Sabonis's versatility. Someone who is 20, 11, and 6 assists a night guy can always help. And I think his high basketball IQ really helps this offense move similar to the way, and I'm not comparing the two, but similar to the way that Draymond can make the Golden State offense move. A big man that can move the ball, that has some versatility. And then I think really, to be honest, the biggest leap was for De'Aaron Fox. And it's not necessarily on the scoring end, because this guy's been a plus 20 scorer outside of his first year or two since he's been in the league. But I think the step has been in the leadership role, where he's actually getting more vocal. When this team goes 2 or 3 empty possessions at a time, he'll finally slow them down, direct guys, and really be the quarterback on the offensive end. His ability to make his teammates better, understanding that he has so much shooting around him now that if he gets his shooters going, that's only going to open up the floor for him. He's shooting a higher percentage. I think he's at about nearly 38% or 37.5% from the three-point line, which is, if I'm not mistaken, a career high for him.
And teams are already not going under on him anymore, which opens up the entire floor for them.
Downhill. And then to me, the place where I think he made the biggest jump, and I challenged him, was I feel like he can be an all-league defender. His instincts, his speed, his lateral movement, his hand activity. If you're the fastest guy in offense, there's no reason why you can't be a demon on defense. And I just think that's the want to do it. So I feel like, De'Aaron could be a possibly first-time All-Star, which he deserves. But the only thing that could possibly, I say, keep him back from that is the Kings' record. But the way they're playing, obviously that's trending in the right direction. And then I think I challenge him to be an all-NBA defender. Along with Davion Mitchell, when Davion has his rhythm, to me, that could be arguably the best defensive backcourt in the game. So huge shout out to the guys, but in particularly Mike Brown. Mike Brown to be able to, land in this situation. I had Mike Brown twice with the Lakers. One time it was very ugly. And then I had him again when, Steve Kerr was dealing with his issues with Golden State. Really a player's kind of coach. But my fear that coming into this season was Mike is such a player's guy and so nice that he wouldn't necessarily have that demand of buying into this new system. We need to create an identity, but I've been completely wrong with that, happily completely wrong with that. And every time I talk to the players, Zach, the one thing they say is Mike this, Mike that, Mike this, which means I know these guys are buying in. So that was a lot, but happy for the team and definitely heading in the right direction.
It was long overdue for Mike Brown to get another chance at head coach. And what's really interesting is the rep on him was good defensive coach. He'll grind it. He wants to grind the game down. He'll install a system. He'll get everyone to run that system. Very basic. And I was like, that's exactly what the Kings need. Just like, here are the rules, follow the rules. And like you said with Fox, man, we've been waiting on this from Fox.
Yep.
For 3 years. At the end of the 18-19 season, when the Kings seemed to have something going, Dave Yeager was the coach. They started playing well, like Bagley and Giles were playing well, Hield, Bogdanovich. I loved Fox. I loved his spirit. He seemed to be ready for a leadership role, and then it just didn't happen. His defense didn't come, and now it's here. But the rap on Mike Brown was uncreative offensive coach. Boring, sludgy, ISO, whatever offense, just uncreative. And I wonder if all that time with the Warriors has sort of shaped him into the head coach he's sort of destined to be at the peak of his game, because the half-court offense, I don't know if I would describe it as intricate, but there's a lot going on. There's like 2 guys curling off screens at the same time on opposite sides of the floor. There's flare screens. And to me, Matt, the thing that stands out, and you can talk more about why this matters, they run everything full speed. Like the cuts, the initial catch and go drives, the screens, the burst and the energy and like the ferocity with which they do that stuff, it jumps out of the screen. They are playing half-court offense fast. And we don't often talk about the pace of half-court offense, but
right.
they are just hitting people hard. Have you noticed that too? Like, and why does that matter?
I mean, I think it's important, and obviously, and Zach, I think you hit it on the head. His time in Golden State and seeing the way that offense, you got to think, going to Golden State, when I was with the Clippers and we were able to kind of beat Golden State right before they made their run, when Steve Kerr came in and implemented this offense, it completely freed that team up. It freed Steph up. It freed Klay up. It freed Draymond's playmaking ability up. And really, that's what I see on this team. Again, I spoke to DeMontis's playmaking ability when we first started, and I think he's a key because De'Aaron Fox traditionally doesn't necessarily hasn't been an assist type, get your guy going. He'll get his 5 or 6 assists because he has the ball in his hands, but now that he's looking for guys as well, DeMontis's offensive versatility is very beneficial. And then just the spacing they're able to play with because they have so many shooters. This is a league of defense and shooting. You know what I mean? And if you can do those two things, you're going to have a chance. So obviously, you know, we'll get to the defense where they can improve, but I think they are better than their numbers, like you mentioned. This offense is fun to watch, and I think
it's a blast to watch. It's a blast.
You guys, and this team is deep. You know, Terrence Davis had a 30-plus game the other night against Brooklyn, and he's someone that's kind of in and out of the rotation. Malik Monk can slap you for 20 points. Kevin Huerter's averaging nearly 17 points a game and shooting 50% from the three-point line. We know what De'Aaron's giving you. You know, DeMontis is a 20-10 and 6 guy. So there's so many. And then I haven't even spoken to Keegan Murray, who, you know, obviously had it came to note that, you know, his grandmother had a stroke and he struggled for a few games, but he seems to have found his footing. And I like his big, long 6'8" ability to shoot, soft touch around the rim. Trey Lyles is someone who goes unsung, and he's kind of a Swiss Army knife where Mike can put him on the, you know, put him in for defense, put him in for offense. Good things always happen. So I love the depth. But again, I think you made a great point as well. The speed with which they play in the half-court set is so important because, you know, the one thing I remember when I had my brief stint with Golden State the last time was, you know, when you run hard, you're going to get open, but also when you set these screens, because now you have such dynamic shooters coming off, and Huerter and these other guys, that the slip pass, you know, Chimezie Metu is starting to make a living on slipping and going to the rim and doing some things like that. So again, this is a fun team to watch. And I'm just happy from a standpoint of, you know, this is my hometown team. This team hasn't been good since the Weber era. And, you know, at that point, we felt like we're on top of the world. Sacramento's economy and growth was the biggest it's ever been because the Kings were good. So it's just good to see, you know, them bringing some life back up into the city, although it's only early and we're one game above 500. Again, I just think they're starting to believe in Mike Brown, which is important. And I think his time in Golden State honed him because he was always a very solid, creative defensive coach. But I think his time around those players in Golden State and that coaching staff really gave him the kind of the vision to implement the offensive system with this team.
And there's nothing in the numbers anywhere offensively that suggests this is a fluke. And before the season, I thought they should be a top 10 offense. I said they should be a top 10, top 8 offense, maybe. There's nothing in the numbers. You can't find it anywhere. They're not shooting outrageously well from anywhere except at the rim. And like everybody shoots pretty well at the rim. They're first in shooting percentage at the rim. So maybe they fall to 6th. It's still going to be a really good shooting percentage. And here's a stat that I found about that sort of indicates how their half-court offense is just this whirring machine of good stuff. In Atlanta, Kevin Huerter, we think of Kevin Huerter as a guy who will come off screens, right? He's a shooter. He's going to come off screens. I've noticed in a lot of these Kings games, he's setting screens.
That's Steph and Klay.
He's setting now, according to the tracking data, 10 off-ball screens he's setting per 100 possessions. In Atlanta, that was like 2 or 3 per 100 possessions. And the more, to your point about Sabonis, the more you just start running around and having him screening for him, the more likely, especially if you do it fast, you're going to force the other team to switch. Yep. And once you switch a small guy onto Sabonis, he's such a brute in the post that sometimes he doesn't even have to touch the ball. Once the switch happens, they start loading onto him. He doesn't have to touch the ball. He's already drawn the attention. The ball starts moving around. Boom, someone gets an open 3. And when he does have the ball, he is just beasting in the post. They're scoring, like, I'm looking it up now, 1.2 points per possession on every Sabonis post up. That's like that would like lead the league over a full season. And as you mentioned, he and Fox are tied for most assists on the team. The offense is real. This is not going away.
And I heard, and I forgot what the number was, and I didn't even know it was a stat, which is crazy, but his dribble handoffs, like he's a top 2 or 3 guy creating offense for the guy he's dribble handoff, and I'm probably saying it wrong, but someone threw it out the other day during the broadcast. Like, damn, I didn't even know that was a stat, but that's a great stat because
Dude,
again,
they keep, not only do they keep that stat, Matt, they keep the fake handoffs when you fake it and keep it. That's a stat now too.
Right. No, but to touch your Herter point, and I hate kind of referencing back to the Warriors, but at the same time, I don't mind because you're copying greatness. The thing that still makes them tough, but Steph and Klay setting screens, you really don't know how to play that because obviously you're taught to open up when someone's setting the screen and make sure your guy gets through. But when you're guarding such a great shooter, you can't. So if Kevin Huerter's setting these up screens, these rip screen, these side screens, they know offensive or defensively that those guys are going to stick to Huerter. And again, that's when guys are flying off to the rim and getting back cuts and back doors because you're so afraid to leave Kevin Huerter's body. So again, I just think this offense is poetry in motion. I love it. And really the assist to made basket ratio is something I always talk about at halftime, every single game. And we're somewhere near like the 16 to 19 assists per 23, 24, 25 baskets. And that's when you know that the ball is really flying around because this has always been kind of a spread out and let De'Aaron get downhill, but they would always shrink because they hadn't had any shooting. So now that the court is wide open, he's finding people, Sabonis is finding people. It even makes the court more wide for De'Aaron to get downhill. And another thing that I think I mentioned on ESPN, we were on together today, that, De'Aaron Fox is number 1 in the league in clutch points.
I'm looking at it now. Number 1, last 5 minutes of close games, 42 points on 18 of 28 shooting. He's stepping up, and they're not easy shots. He's making these like step back twos, but he's making them.
Yeah, above 50% from the 3-point line. And another area he's increased or got better in, and we haven't really talked about his free throw percentage. His ability to knock down big free throws and clutch free throws when it matters. That was an issue last year. Another thing that I saw coming into the season that the team was just their starts. Their starts in the first and third quarter were terrible. And I felt like they lost a handful of games because of those starts. And one thing I can definitely say is their third quarter numbers, and I don't know what they particularly are, but their third quarter starts have been great. Since they've been, I think they're 7-3 in their last 10 games, but their third quarter starts coming out of that third quarter, not just this team, but so many teams lose the game, the momentum in those first 5 minutes at a halftime. So that was something that before the first game, I was just like, this is something that a glaring weakness I saw last year. So again, I don't know their numbers this year, but I know they're a lot better than they were last year, starting the third quarter, that first 5 minutes.
Well, their starting lineup, Fox, Huerter, Barnes, Murray, Sabonis is plus 16 per 100 possessions. So that helps. If your starting lineup's awesome, you're going to win the third quarter a lot. They're plus 8 per 100 possessions with Fox and Sabonis on the floor. They're staggering those two guys, which is smart. They're winning the Sabonis minutes and losing the Fox minutes, but it's early. I wouldn't read too much into any of that. And again, there's nothing that suggests this is a fluke. Defensively, 26th, and you want to say, same old Kangs. But here's why I say reason for hope. You look at the numbers, average in allowing free throws, average is fine. Average in forcing turnovers, average is fine. Second in defensive rebounding, that's awesome. If you want to be a competent defense, just don't give them second chances. That's an awesome sign. And then you look at the shots they allow, the third fewest threes and the 6th most mid-range jumpers, an average at the rim. So you break it down, essentially why they're 26 in defense is teams are just shooting the lights out from everywhere, including threes and mid-range. Now, the rim, they allowed a really bad field goal percentage at the rim last season after they got Sabonis. It's happening again this year. That just might be baked in to their team. Yeah. But if the opponent threes regress to normal, I don't see any reason why this team can't be 17th, 18th, 19th in defense, and you keep a top 3 offense. That's a good team.
Yeah, well, I mean, and Zach, especially with this younger generation, defense is what's going to come around a little slower than the offensive end because everyone wants to get to that offensive end, and that's where the highlights are, and that's where you're getting your money at. But I think, obviously, Mike's defensive principles are going to take a little bit of time to kick in, but I have seen, again, the communication being better, switching with the purpose, being on the split line, guys taking charges, guys making those second and third efforts. And then most importantly, like you said, limiting the second shots. Again, this is not a very big team. You know what I mean? And Sabonis is definitely not a rim protector, but he is their center. So this is all going to be scrambling, hard work, and hustle. And the one thing I like too is guards are coming back in and getting rebounds.
It's a great point.
Murray is a good rebounder for being a young guy. Like the way he rebounds. Harrison Barnes is someone who rebounds for them. So again, it's definitely rebounding by committee. But I'm with you. I think that, the more, because I know Mike is drilling that every single day. So as time goes on, I know that defense will improve. And again, it's just understanding, because this is, still a fairly young team. And I think what guards struggle with the most is movement, and then being able to how do you navigate screens. A lot of young guys die on screens. You know what I mean? So just being able to understand how to navigate that, get through screens, switching with the purpose, being able to, if you are switching on, being able to control those first two dribbles. It's all positive things. Obviously, sometimes the numbers can be deceiving, but at the same time, they are where they are for a reason. But to me, it's still early. And I think, come mid-January, similar to where, Ime Udoka had the Celtics, and I'm not saying this is a similar team, but his philosophies and principles all of a sudden kicked in January for this team. So, again, I think they're heading in the right direction in both categories, and I'm hoping with just some more time, the defense will start holding up their end of the bargain as well.
So I went through the whole statistical case for why they're probably better than the 26th defense, and you made the more important case, which is, to me, I watched them play. They're playing hard. They're rotating on the flight of the ball. They're not messing up rotations. Like when they X out, one guy will go to the corner, one guy will go up to the wing. Like they're actually executing, I think, okay for the most part. And if they continue to do that, the numbers will reflect that they're playing hard and they're executing. Harrison Barnes is in the perfect role for him. He's the fifth option in the starting five. I like Murray. Murray's just a basketball player, man. He's good. This is fun. They're really fun to watch. I don't know, East Coast, it's late. Yeah. Maybe watch a Kings game the next morning, but they're fun. And I haven't been in that arena yet this year. On TV, it sounds loud. Is it that loud?
They got great fans. And to speak to, I was supposed to work the Nets game the other night, and it got bumped to TNT. And I'm just like, damn, I wanted to work the game. But when was the last time the Kings have been on TNT? You know what I mean? So for them, I love that opportunity. To touch back on the defensive point real quick too. And one thing that I, obviously as a veteran player, wouldn't like and didn't like, but which I love now for this young team who's trying to build an identity, Mike Brown will call a defensive timeout within 30 seconds.
It's like, amazing.
You mess up, the game can just tip, and I'd be like, Mike, what the f-? I would think like that because I'm a vet, but I love it with this young team because he's teaching on the fly. It can be the first 2 minutes of the game, the start of the third, the start of the
possession. He'll do it one possession.
Yeah. Michael sees something that he feels is important, which it is, because they're trying to build this defensive foundation, and Mike does not hesitate to call a timeout. And obviously, I think with this team, it's a beautiful thing.
Matt Barnes, your work is tremendous. It's really fun working with you, and we get the chance to do it together. Everybody knows where to find all the smoke. It's everywhere. You and Stack have built an empire. Thank you for lending the Lowe Post a little bit of your time, and I will see you soon.
Zach, thanks for having me, buddy. I'll see you soon.